Welcome, everyone, and we are back to another session. Again, promises, or it would rather be a very pulsating session, I can tell you, because I know many of these speakers, and they will bring a variety of, I would say, perspective. On the other side of the before the fireside channel session, you heard about the GCCs and the trajectory in terms of the path they have embarked upon in terms of their innovation and transformation. This session is about enterprises, brick and mortar enterprises, and even the new age enterprises. And what we are calling this session is about evolution of new age enterprises with the underpinning of quad, novel frameworks and approaches for market share and competitive advantage. Let me build a context about this session before I hand it over to the moderator. Now, this has been said by Satya Nadella very aptly, in fact, when the pandemic started, which has become a pandemic. Uh, it's about there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen. Traditional enterprises are very vulnerable to acceleration to quad, which is AI, data engineering, cloud, and design. And quad is eating every industry, which is the truth. With new business model and quad coming in the market, incumbent business models are getting challenged. New competitors emerge, and prior partners start to resemble competitors. New age enterprises have started adopting best of the breed quad capabilities and solution to challenge the status quo, and as a resultant, position themselves differentiated with increased market share and creating their own moat and North Star. What are the new strategic approaches and frameworks that new age enterprises have applied with underpinning of quad? What strategy reset traditional enterprises have to do to sustain their competitive advantage, and how quad could be the force multiplier to them? These and many more questions we will address in this panel, and we have got a very ensemble set of speakers out here, very experienced out here. Rohini Srivastava, National Technology Officer, Microsoft India; Jayati Day, Global Analytics Leader for Amazon; Purnesh Kali, Head of Analytics for Hindalco. So we've also got a kind of a, I won't call it a traditional brick and mortar, but actually a business which needs a very different change altogether. And maybe Purnesh will share light on this. Ishu Jain, Director Data Science and Analytics, Swiggy. And for moderating this session, we will have Som Shankar Ghosh, VP and Practice Head, Genpact. Over to you, Som. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Samir. Good afternoon, good morning.
I think we have Som has dropped out. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, he's
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Sorry.
we can hear you, Som. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right. Cool. So, thanks, Samir. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's an extremely pertinent topic, needless to say, and I've already had quite a few friends and colleagues from the fraternity reach out with the questions that they would want us to cover in the sessions. And keeping in mind the time constraint that we have, I'd rather get into the discussion right away. So the first question that I have, and it's directed to all the panelists. So how do you see the new age and traditional enterprises have pivoted and navigated their transformation and innovation agenda during the pandemic? And what new winds of change will be witnessed at a strategic level underpinned by Quad? So let's start with you, Rohini, if I may.
Sure. So as thanks for that, Som, and looking forward to the conversation. So as Samir was talking about the whole digital acceleration that has been driven, I think one of the important concepts in the context of Quad that I'd like to bring out is there is a digital feedback loop. Which is a very interesting concept, that because when you do digital, you are creating data, and that data drives insights which supposed to drive decisions, and then either humans are taking those decisions or algorithms are taking those decisions, which then create more data, right? So there is a loop that getting created. But how do you create this loop such that the amplification is positive and you are into a flywheel effect, right? And that's where these the four technologies of Quad really come in, because you could have data that is potentially in your data warehouse, and you're looking at an on Excel, etc., and creating decisions. But or you could have it really at a global scale, be able to get from different locations on the cloud, and that then drive decision making at a global scale, right?
Absolutely.
Now, when you need to do that in a way that is real time, then your AI comes in. Engineering comes in if you want to do it in a way that is across scale, at scale, repeatable, and in ways that that machines can do the feedback loop positively. And finally, the organizations which are further ahead in that journey, they need to think about design and the user experience. So the whole area of digital feedback loop is very closely tied to where you are in that journey and how you're going to use the quad technologies to grow further in that journey.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thanks, Veni. Purnesh, if I could ask you the same question.
Yeah, thanks, Som. Pleasure to be here. Just to add, from an enterprise perspective or large companies perspective, right? So if we take a step back, even before the pandemic, the adoption of these technologies has been there in various degrees of maturity, right? So at least for the last maybe in India for the last half a decade or so. Globally, if you are speaking, it's much longer. What I see that has changed dramatically in the last couple of years is the way to think about quad, or broadly speaking, technology, leveraging technology. So earlier it used to be about adopting these technologies, right? So adopting digital to be as a strategic advantage or to solve a problem. So but now everyone is trying to be digital first. Everyone is trying to be digital native. They're not trying to adopt digital anymore. That's a stark contrast that I see all the way across the hierarchy, all the way up to the boardrooms. So in a way, right? So if, in my mind, my mental model, the way I'm thinking about this shift is that it's not science fiction anymore. It has become a science fact, right? So that's the stark contrast from
Sure.
the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Cool. Jayati, if I might ask you the same question, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Thanks for having me on this forum. I think one of the trends that we are seeing is the emergence of new data roles. When I sort of think about it, you will see a lot of new roles coming up, like data platform leader or director of data platforms, right? These are new roles which envisages setting up end-to-end cloud data lakes, warehouses, implement governances, framework, choosing the BI tool, right? So these are, and how do you connect it to your consumers? Along with that, there's a new KPI that's coming, right? Which is end user adoption. So these are things that were not there. And I think as we are talking about winds of change, new roles in terms of looking at data and connecting it back to the end user or the customer or consumer is becoming a different trend, if you may sort of ask.
Sure. And Ishu, what would be your views on this?
Sure, thanks, Som. Pleasure to be here. So, as we all know, Swiggy is a data first company, right? And it's also digital first company. So, what it meant in terms of the whole pandemic is that we saw the consumer changing more than the quad, because that was always central to our strategy. The end consumer changed. Were pushed to use certain the new needs emerged, whether in terms of grocery, whether in terms of delivery, whether in terms of food, how that is delivered, also that needs, also because we wanted social distancing, hygiene, no contact delivery, mask, etc., and the governance around it. So hence we do see that now at our organization for sure is now all about these new categories, launching them, scaling them, committed to them, right? And we saw a huge traction around these, which we had been, by the way, trying for some time to get into.
Sure.
But the kind of lift we got due to the pandemic is extremely different. So yeah, and then of course we have to figure out how our systems need to scale, because now there are these new needs which are in place and we can cater to.
So staying with you on that issue, so of late, quad adoption and maturity have seen some solid benchmarking mechanisms by enterprises and startups. And specifically what you said, that because the end consumer and their needs have changed, right? So how do you see the quad being leveraged to gain market share and drive competitive advantage?
Sure. So I'll give you some 2-3 relevant examples from, let's say, I'll use my experience which I've seen in Swiggy, but I can also talk about a lot of consulting companies because I have that background. For Swiggy, right, we've launched Instamart. So we realized that grocery is the new category and we want to gain more and more market share into this. Because of that, the success which we've seen is like unprecedented. And now we see Big Basket pivoting to a more faster delivery, lower AOVs. In fact, we were so bullish that actually now we are in direct competition. We see a lot of new apps coming in which says 10-minute delivery, etc. This is because we've pivoted and we've shown now that what kind of growth is possible, right? So it's about gaining that market share competitive advantage with the first mover or the second mover advantage, if I can say so. However, let me talk about more on a day-to-day basis, right? Which is a more a problem which is there on a day-to-day basis, right? So these are two things. One is we want more orders on our platform. How do we identify the white spaces, right? So we have we also work at a geohash level where we actually look at a geohash level where are the white spaces in terms of supply. Now that supply could be the quality of supply could be the type of supply, and then we try to marry that geohash with customer, right? The price points, etc. And then onboard restaurants accordingly. And hence we're trying to gain that market share in those areas in a more informed manner. And of course, the quad has to come together because it's huge data. And how do we actually leverage it, store it, make it cost effective, get an ROI in terms of, then what product can be launched with this data. That also has to happen, right? So that is number one. Number two, we are sometimes limited by the supply, which is supply of drivers to deliver, the orders. A quick example is NYE, right? So the estimates are about, we do our whole, obviously, the forecasting, etc. On that. But how do we actually bring it together? We actually come together as a company. Our systems are scaled for stress testing in terms of data leverage, analytics, strategy. We have real-time reporting systems which tells us where the heat map of the order and the heat map of the supply is, and then how do we move that supply to where the orders are coming. And there we also announce dynamic rewards for the drivers to go there, right? So that is also linked through analytics or AI or models, how we want to talk about it, ML, etc. But those are automatically announced on the apps so that they go to that, they are available for us, in that slot, in that hour, etc. to go there. And that's how we are able to fulfill our orders. So if I have to say this without revealing the actual numbers, our cost of delivery this year was almost 40% less than last year because we were able to leverage quad much better this time than the last time.
Sure.
So yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Ishu. Now, Purnesh, you have a completely at the other end of the spectrum than where Ishu is from a business perspective. How are you looking at the same aspect of gaining market share and driving competitive advantage using quad?
Yeah. So building on the same theme, right? So adopting digital versus being digital first. So in Swiggy's case, it's a digital first business, whereas most of the enterprises, right? So when we think about creating specialists in quad skills, the convention or traditionally until now, it has been, okay, create a central team of 10 members, 20 members who are experts. So that team will be available to the business 24/7 for any questions. But of course, while that model works beautifully well, or for certain cases, the flaws with that is that it's a transaction model. Every time business has a question, right? So be it related to, let's say, supply chain or procurement or anything. So the interaction happens back and forth between the so-called quad team versus and the business team. Some businesses, of course, do it more seamlessly, but what the way we are doing it, and at least the vision and what most businesses should do is, so if I take supply chain as an example, rather than being a touch point or rather than being a bottleneck to answer the questions, we need to start thinking about tools that will answer most of these questions out of the box, right? So may not be new for startups or new age businesses, but when you think about an enterprise, right, just imagine if I'm running a very complex global supply chain that touches all the continents and I'm moving metal across ocean, road, rail. So imagine getting all of that data onto the same platform. So without asking anyone, at the click of a button, I can get real-time insights into what's happening with my shipment. That is one. That's just the starting point. But then build layers of complexities on top of that. So can that platform provide predictions around when there will be delays? Can that platform provide recommendations around how to mitigate those risks? And even going a step beyond that, right? So usually where the most complex of be it AI side or culmination of quad, the complexity is around the scenario modeling. So if I do this, what will happen? Can we build that also into the same platform? End of the day, can we leverage quad? Can we leverage cloud and engineering to really build a very strong foundation? On top of that, build AI models and use excellent design principles to build a platform that is self-sufficient, and so that business will be able to take decisions on their own, right? So this is the direction, and companies, and this is very, very tricky. It's of course much harder, it's
Said
much
than
easier
done.
than done,
Sure.
but companies who are able to crack this will definitely have a strategic advantage.
Sure, and staying with you on that, I mean, you actually touched upon what I had in mind for the, going forward on this, is, how do you anticipate, the strategies the CXOs are looking with respect to ROI being derived from quad, because this has become a boardroom conversation now. So how do you actually, I mean, what do you think the CXO strategies are going to be going forward on using of quad?
Yeah. So right, so I mean, ROI is a topic I think that we could have hours and hours of
Of
discussion,
course.
but and there's many ways to skin this cat, right? So at least from again, from my perspective, uh, especially the boards and the leaders, the way to maybe just couple of ways to think about this. One, I think Ishu just gave an example about Swiggy and how they are building real-time infrastructure. That is so true for Swiggy. Probably optimizing for delivery speeds, right? So they're optimizing in minutes. Probably if you look at Amazon on the .com or the .in site, maybe they're optimizing for delivery speeds in terms of hours. So they're, and contrast that with our kind of business where we are talking about deliveries across continents that spans multiple weeks, right? So it's, I'm not optimizing for speed anymore. Because we are moving metal, let's say copper, that is highly expensive, we have to optimize for safety. We have to optimize for probably fraud. We have to optimize for risk, right? So though we are building the same supply chain stack, the objective function that one business optimizes is going to be very different than a different business that is going to optimize. I believe this is where I've seen or at least I think first and foremost, every business has to be super clear about the industry, the business, and the problem that they're trying to solve, because it is not going to help me if I simply copy a Swiggy stack and then try to build that stack for me, right? So that is a first path for failure for return on investment discussion. So forget about everything, right? So the moment you build a very excellent real-time stack, end of the day, it's not going to add any value. What are you going to do, right? It's a useless multi-million dollars of so be cognizant about your business, right? So try to solve specific problems for your business, and just adding another dimension to this, right? So usually return on investments at large enterprises is usually an afterthought. So instead of an afterthought, I think we need to get better at even before we start investing in any technology, if we are clear about why we are doing it, which specific problem that we are trying to solve, what is our north star kind of a discussion. So right, so if we are clear, right, so then maybe another dimension to ROI, right. So I'll just wrap up in a few seconds. Once you are clear on what you are going to do, broadly speaking, right, so again, any problem, at least the way I think about it, is it could be a data problem, it could be a technology problem, or it could be a business problem. What do I mean by that is that it may sound obvious, but unless we are very clear, this is where again ROI misalignment will happen. If you're building a price forecasting model, I believe someone mentioned a forecasting model, where if I'm building any especially related to a market related price forecasting model, the most important thing is having lots and lots of alternate data sets. Without having lots of alternate data sets, even if I have the best tech stack, even if I have the best data scientists in the world, there's nothing I'm going to do. It's impossible to build a decent model. So there we have to be clear that, okay, I have to invest my 80-90% in data, not in tech. Don't unnecessarily spend on tech. Don't unnecessarily spend on, because data scientists are important. Whereas a tech problem, if you want to solve, if you want to process say, millions of events in real time, or in such case, right, definitely go all out, invest in the best tech stack in the world, because only tech can solve that problem. The last, this is the most trickiest part, I believe, are these business problems where neither tech nor data are going to solve. This is where AI comes into picture. Understanding your business complexities and then trying to model that, right, so either predict, forecast, or prescribe
Sure.
something, right. So
Perfect.
once you're clear what you are solving for, then ROI discussion becomes easier.
Thank you. Thanks, Purnesh. And Jayati, I mean, without restricting you to
Yes,
Amazon.
sorry to intervene. We are 5 minutes away from wrapping up. Please expedite. Thank
Sure.
you so much.
Absolutely, sure. So, Jayati, without restricting you to Amazon alone, how would you view, the ROI discussion, and then more specifically, what are your views on, how new capabilities are being used to actually meet enterprise expectations? So let's get into that as well.
Sure, I'll keep it short. I think we're short of time. But if you look at it, continuing from Punesh's discussion, right, it depends on what is your KPI that you're looking for. Is it cost? Is it compute power? Is it you're looking at paper use? You're looking at reducing the latency or data quality, right? Scalability. So there are different metrics that you are choosing at all points of time, right? And as different systems are churning out different data, right now I think what is required is what is easy to set up, what is plug and play, have it easy to set up in the first day, right, have open APIs. So things of that sort. It really depends on your ROIs that you are evaluating at this point of time. Is I think it's a discussion like Punesh rightly said. It depends on what is your use case and how do you measure it. If I want something as storage, then an S3 sort of thing, which is or a Redshift cluster, which come as low as less than $1 for a 2 TB version. So it depends on what your use cases are.
Sure. And Rohini, if I might ask you, I mean, given your, the exposure and the massive experience that you've had, where do you see, enterprises pivoting towards in terms of building out new capabilities, keeping the future in mind?
Yeah, I think great examples. I think I really like the contrast between what Purnesh was talking about and what Ishu was talking about. And that also brought me to think about, because data is becoming such a central part of businesses, operations, employee experiences, what have you. I think people are trying to make it much, much more. The whole idea of democratization and empowerment is becoming very important. Sure. Because you are going to need these, what you call citizen data scientists, citizen people who are able to consume data without having to know anything about data science or data analytics. They have to be able to do visually, even they have to be able to, query data in various ways, even very user-friendly ways. on one hand is that. Then you have other people like such as techniques such as low code, no code type of capabilities coming into picture, because then you want to be able to create applications very quickly. You want to be able to create use your data and get insights very quickly. Same way you have people who are AI engineers who can use cognitive capabilities and create applications, and they are not data scientists, they are engineers. They're just calling APIs and creating applications. And then of course at the end you have data scientists who can do coding or can do drag and drop and try different models and do many experiments, or really do very full custom coding. So this entire range of capability, entire range of expertise and ability to really meet the users, meet the developers, scientists where they are, is I think a big trend that you are seeing, from complete full-blown data scientist, science knowledge, to somebody who's just doing drag and drop and just consuming data.
So on the same breath, let me ask you, Rohini, I mean, what is probably one of the biggest or noticeable interventions that you've seen in most recent times that have actually, can actually pivot the current scenario for Quad going forward?
I would say that I think, like I was mentioning in my
perspective is what I was looking
Sorry?
at. More from a strategic perspective is what I was looking at.
Yeah. So I think, to my earlier point I was making, I think the use of the 4 technologies, to bring business value where you are in that feedback loop I was talking about earlier, in the digital feedback loop. I think that will be very important, because not everybody needs to use AI right away. People, Purnesh talked about a fact that your very whole global ways of looking at data, even visualizing data, would be very valuable to him, right? And similarly, Ishu talked about the fact that she needs very time sensitive recommendations, stream analytics and things like that. So I think that ability to use the right level of your feedback loop is going to be critical.
Perfect. I guess we're on the right at the bottom of the hour. So and there are plenty of questions that are coming in right now in terms of what we could have actually addressed. But thank you so much for a very lively discussion, and thank you for your time. Back to you, Samir.
Thank you so much, Som, for a great moderation. And I think this particular, and we are sorry about the time, because that's how it is actually, because when you get 5, or I would say industry professionals, I think there are diverse perspective, and I think each one of you have a trajectory. I mean, Rohini has seen, knowing her, the whole variety of clients in terms of global Indian, how they are coping up in terms of accelerating this whole journey towards Quad, as we say. And Punesh, while Hindalco is a behemoth in terms of, but how quickly they're trying to adopt to these gyrations in terms of the market forces leveraging. And of course, Ishu started with data first in terms of the Swiggy, and everyone knows about Amazon and their technical prowess. Great session in terms of the insights, because this session was meaningful in terms of giving audience a relative comparison in terms of how GCCs are equipping themselves in terms of preparation on the Quad side, and how enterprises, whether it's the new age or I would say the brick and mortar, are also accelerating their journey. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Console, can we move to the next session, please?